community even further information as we go forward.
So just to reiterate, the reason why we are doing this is because our district is on that path to hit a financial deficit in this next school year. We have to take actions so that way our district isn't put at risk. We know that we have time. With doing this plan, it buys our district an additional 4 to 5 years. But with these alterations, our district will be looking to save about roughly $3 million a year in operating costs, which cuts that deficit in half. So with that, it buys us enough time, and our other goal is through natural attrition is how we would meet the need of the remaining amount. We know that there's a high volume of retirements coming in the district, and so we know that there are going to be ways that our district can look to right-size our staffing in the district. And our commitment is out there that we are not looking to lay individuals off. We are not wanting to cut pay of our individuals. Back when Mike was here in this district, the district every single staff member took a 10% pay cut. Mike said it perfect. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to ask that of our staff when they did it once so that we weren't in this position again.
And I'll say that because when our staff took that pay cut, it was with the understanding, it was with a promise that we wouldn't find ourselves in this boat again. And that is why it is just absolutely not acceptable for us to be able to go back to our employees and say, hey, you're going to have to cover the cost of this. It's just not where we need to be. And we also know from the vantage point of our families and our students, cutting staff is not where we need to be either. So the place we need to be right now is making sure that we are right-sized on our facilities and that we're using everything to its fullest potential.
Is there any discussion? Moving on to item number 8, action items. And I just want to reiterate before we get into this, the action for this plan will not be taken during this. It'll be taken after public comment to give the audience the abilities.
Action items. Number 1, out-of-state field trip request, Cedar Point, policies 2340 and policy 8640. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the following out-of-state field trip request: West Middle School, Cedar Point, Sandusky, Ohio, May 30th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second? Second. Okay. Mrs. Thomas. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Schufelt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
It carries 7-0. Number 2, that's not an overnight, is it?
It's out of state.
Out of state. Okay, out of state field trip request, Imagination Station, policy 2340 and policy 8640. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the following out of state field trip request: Eureka Heights Elementary, Imagination Station, Toledo, Ohio, February 9th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Heath. Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Schufelt.
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Number 3, overnight conference request, Grand Rapids, policy 6550. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the overnight conference request for James Bergler, Victoria Frangidikis, Marquita Moore, and Brian
Zord.
Resort. I know what I had that, and I messed it up anyway. To attend the Michigan Music Conference, January 25th through the 27th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Thomas. Mrs. Schufelt.
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes,
That carries 7-0. Motion number 4, Taylor Association of Central Staff Administrators, TAXA Memorandum of Understanding. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Taylor School District and the Taylor Association of Central Staff Administrators, TAXA, regarding the retirement incentive. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers, is there a second?
second,
Mrs. Thomas. Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt?
yes,
Motion carries 7-0. Taylor Principal Association, TPA, Memorandum of Understanding. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Taylor School District and the Taylor Principals Association, TPA, regarding the retirement advancement. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Mrs. Thomas. Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt?
yes,
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Number 6, Taylor Federation of Teachers, TFT, Memorandum of Understanding. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Taylor School District and the Taylor Federation of Teachers, TFT, regarding the retirement advancement. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
second,
Mrs. Thomas?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt?
yes,
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Motion carries 7-0. Number 7, 26M, Taylor School Support Staff Association Memorandum of Understanding. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Taylor School District and the 26M Taylor Schools Support Staff TSSSSA regarding a retirement advancement. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
second,
Is that Mrs. Thomas again? Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Is that Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt?
yes,
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Black, yes. Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Number 8, request to hire Director of Special Education, Policy 3120. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the hiring of Erica Smith for the position Director of Special Education. Salary for the position will be $91,296. CD1 prorated. Ms. Smith's start date will be Monday, January 29th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt.
yes,
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Motion is carried 7-0. Number 9, request to hire Dean of Students, Policy 3120. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the hiring of Ryan, is it Beebe, for the position, Dean of Students at West Middle School. Salary for the position will be $80,000, step 1 prorated. Mr. Beebe, start date will be Monday, January 8th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Myers. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Mrs. Thomas. Mrs. Thomas.
yes,
Mrs. Shufeldt.
yes,
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Black is a yes. Mr. Heath.
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Motion is carried 7-0.